Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening up a toolkit that for a really significant chapter of internet history wasn't just a library, it was pretty much the way the web was built.
It really was.
We're dissecting jQuery, Novice to Ninja by Earle Castledine and Craig Sharkey.
It's such a fascinating book because it really captures this pivotal moment. It's basically a field manual for winning the browser wars. And even though the web has evolved so much, the mindset in here is still foundational.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
A field manual. And the title, Novice to Ninja, it sounds a bit like an 80s action movie, but they're actually proposing a very specific philosophy. It's not just about learning code, is it?
No, not at all. And they make that distinction right away. They argue there's this massive gap between a user of a language and a ninja.
Okay.
A user, might memorize the API, know every function name by heart, but that's just trivia.
That's just having a good memory.
Exactly, not skill. The ninja, in their definition, is all about virtuosity. It's about concise, elegant, and really creative application.
So the difference between knowing how to use a hammer and being a master carpenter.
Precisely. The ninja doesn't just write code that works. They write code that solves the problem in the most efficient, the most elegant way possible.
And to really get why that efficiency was so important, we have to talk about the context, the enemy, so to speak. The book paints a pretty bleak picture of what the web was like before jQuery. They call it the Dark Ages.
And it really was the Wild West.
Yeah.
You have to remember, this was before standardized browsers were a given. You had the browser wars.
Right.
You had Internet Explorer 6, Firefox, Safari, Opera, and they all spoke slightly different dialects of JavaScript.
So you'd read a script that worked perfectly fine in Firefox.
And it would just completely crash and burn in IE6. Or the margins would be off. Or an event just wouldn't fire. Developers were spending, 50% of their time writing the feature, and the other 50% writing hacks to make it work everywhere.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. And the document object model, it wasn't exactly friendly back then either.
Right, manipulating the page itself.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. The DOM is just the tree structure of your HTML tags, but using what we now call vanilla.js to change it was so verbose. To find one element and change its color might take 5 or 6 lines of code.
Plus error checking.
Plus all the error checking.
And then jQuery arrives. And its tagline is just legendary: write less, do more.
It absolutely delivered on that promise. jQuery basically acted as this translation layer. You write one clean line of jQuery, and the library handles all the messy cross-browser junk in the background. It just smoothed over all the cracks in the web.
So to guide us through this journey from, frustration to elegance, we're going to follow the book's narrative. They use this fictional case study that, honestly, I kind of wish was real. A startup called Start Tracker.
With the obligatory exclamation point, of course.
Of course. It was the Web 2.0 era. And their business model is, let's say, questionable.
Highly questionable. They use GPS and RFID chips to track the real-time locations of celebrities.
And sell that data to fans and paparazzi.
It's a privacy lawsuit just waiting to happen. But for our purposes, it gives us a really demanding client. Throughout the book, this client is constantly asking for stuff. Make it pop. Fix this huge table. Make the menu look like Flash.
Which is perfect because it grounds all the theory. We're not just learning syntax in a vacuum. We're solving these specific, really annoying problems that every developer runs into.
Exactly.
So let's put on our maybe our white belts for now.
Yeah.
And start with section 1. The core fundamentals.
Yeah.
If I'm a novice, I'm staring at a blank text editor. Where does the magic even begin?
It starts with a shift in perspective. The first thing Castledine and Sharkey really emphasize is that jQuery is JavaScript.
Okay.
It's not some new language you have to compile. It's just a JavaScript file you include in your page. But the gateway, the access point to everything, is the $sign.
The famous $sign. Is that like a special operator in the language?
It looks like one, but it's actually just an alias, a shorthand for the function named jQuery. But because programmers are, let's say, efficient, right, lazy, everyone just uses the $sign. And the basic anatomy of almost every single command follows this one pattern: selector dot action parameters.
Okay, let's break that down. Select.
That's the find part. You wrap the thing you want to find in the $sign.
Yeah.
That's the do part. You chain a method to it.
Parameters.
And that's the how part. You give it the details, find this, do that, use these settings. It's a very logical flow.
Simple enough. But before we can actually find anything, there's a timing issue. The book spends a lot of time on something called a bannel document already. Why is that the first big hurdle?
Okay, so imagine you hire a painter to paint your living room, But he shows up before the house is even built.
Right.
He's just standing there in an empty lot with a bucket of paint.
You can't paint walls that don't exist yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is what happens if your JavaScript runs before the browser has finished building the DOM tree. If you try to select a button that hasn't rendered yet, your code just fails.
Now, traditionally, developers would use something called window.onload. What's the difference? Why was jQuery's way better?
Window.onload is, let's say it's the polite guest who waits for everyone to arrive at the party before eating. It waits for the HTML, the scripts, the styles, and this is the killer, all the images. So if you have a massive high-res banner ad on your page, the user is just staring at a frozen, unresponsive page until that last image finally downloads.
Which feels sluggish.
It feels broken.
Yeah.
It is a total revolution because it fires the moment the HTML structure, the skeleton of the page, is complete.
So it doesn't care about the images.
It doesn't care at all. It lets you start interacting with the page, making things clickable almost instantly. It makes the site feel snappy and responsive.
Okay, so the page is ready. Now we can enter what the book calls the search phase. We need to find elements to manipulate. And this is where they did something genius. They leveraged CSS knowledge.
Yeah, this was the move. They didn't invent some new complicated query language. They just said, hey, you already know CSS, right? You use a hash for IDs and a dot for classes.
Let's just use
Right,
that.
let's just use that. So hashtag celebs grabs the element with the ID of celebs. If you knew CSS, you basically already knew jQuery selectors.
Okay, let's get to our first Star Trek Margie disaster. The client has this massive table of celebrities, names, locations, current relationship status, and he says, it's unreadable. I can't track the rows across the screen. He wants zebra striping.
A classic request, alternating background colors on the rows. Now, in plain JavaScript of that era, just think about the logic you'd have to write.
Oh, man.
You have to get all the table rows into an array. You have to start a loop. You have to check the index of the loop. Is this number divisible by 2? If it is, apply style A. If not, style B.
It's so much code, and it's so prone to off-by-one errors.
Exactly. In jQuery, it's one line. Hashtag celebs tbody.even.
That's it. Just even.
That's it. jQuery introduced these incredibly powerful extensions to CSS selectors called filters. You have .even, .odd, .first, last. You can just ask for what you want in, plain English.
But wait, the book mentions there's a trap here. It's about how computers count.
Ah, yes. The zero index problem. We all fall for it. Computers start counting at 0, not 1.
So the first row is actually index 0, which is an even number.
Precisely. So even selects the first, third, fifth rows, and so on. It trips everyone up the first time, but once you get it, it's incredibly fast. And you can chain these selectors together.
So you can drill down.
You can drill down. Give me the table, then inside the body, then the rows, then just the even ones.
The authors also give a great debugging tip here using dot length.
Right. This is so important. jQuery is designed to fail silently. So if you make a typo and search for hashtag celebrities instead of celebs, it won't crash your site. It just returns an empty object and does nothing. And you'll be staring at your screen for an hour wondering why your code isn't working.
So you check the dot length property.
You just check the length. If hashtag celebrities.length is 0, you know your selector is wrong. It's a 5-second sanity check that can save you hours of pain.
Okay, so we found our even rows. We selected them. Now we need to actually change them. This brings us into section 2. Decorating and enhancing the DOM. We want to make those rows gray.
So we use the .css method. We've already selected the rows. We just chain on .css, background-color, hashtag God.
Super intuitive. But there's a really interesting nuance here the book talks about, something called computed style. It says jQuery gives you the truth, not just what's written in the code. What does that mean?
This is a huge distinction. Let's say in your CSS file, you have a paragraph and you wrote width.auto.
Okay.
If you ask plain JavaScript for the width, it might just literally tell you the string auto, which is not helpful if you're trying to do math with it.
Right. Auto isn't a number I can calculate with.
jQuery looks at the computed style. It asks the browser, okay, given the current screen size, the padding, the font, how many pixels wide is this paragraph actually right now? And it returns 450px.
It gives you the rendered reality.
You rendered reality, which is absolutely essential for building dynamic layouts.
Now, we just set that background color using .css. But Earle and Craig, our authors, they kind of pause here. They wave a yellow flag. They start talking about clean code and bad smells.
Yeah, this is a big philosophical point. Just because you can write CSS inside your JavaScript doesn't mean you should.
It violates this principle of separation of concerns.
Exactly. Ideally, HTML is for your structure, CSS is for your presentation, how it looks, and JavaScript is for behavior, how it acts.
And if you start burying hex codes inside your script files,
You're mixing presentation with behavior. So when the designer comes in next week and says, hey, let's make the stripes light blue, you have to go digging through JavaScript files to find that color instead of just changing one line in a style sheet. It's a maintenance nightmare.
so what's the ninja solution?
You define a class in your CSS file. Let's call it .zebra. And you put the background color rule in there.
Okay.
Then in your jQuery, instead of .css, you just use .addClass zebra. So you're just toggling the classification of the row, and you leave all the visual details to the CSS file.
Precisely. It keeps your code modular, clean, and much easier to maintain.
All right, moving on. Star Trek has a legal problem now. They have this massive, ugly disclaimer text that the lawyers insist has to be on the page, but the client hates it. He wants a hide button. This gets us into handling events.
Right. We need to listen for user interaction. We found our element, we've styled it, and now we need to make it react to the user.
So we select the button. Let's say it has an ID of hide button, and we use the .click method.
And inside the parentheses of .click, we pass it a function, a callback. We're essentially telling the browser, I am registering this chunk of code, don't run it now, run it only when and if someone clicks this specific button.
And this brings up one of the most confusing but also most powerful keywords in all of JavaScript.
The dread of this. THIS. In the context of a jQuery event handler, refers to the specific element that triggered the event.
Why is that so important? Why not just select the button again? Well, imagine you have a list of 10 celebrity photos, and you want each one to zoom in when you click on it. You don't want to write 10 separate click functions with 10 different IDs.
That would be crazy.
Right. You write one generic function that applies to all the images, and inside that function, you just say rect.animate.
So that's actually a little pointer that says the one that was just clicked.
Exactly. It allows you to write one piece of logic that can handle 100 different instances. It's the essence of write less, do more.
Okay, so we click the button, and we want the disclaimer to vanish.
Okay.
Now we're in section 3, content manipulation. We have simple methods like hide and show.
Which are great, but if you want a single button to do both jobs, you'd have to write an if-else statement. You know, if it's visible, then hide it. If it's hidden, then show it.
That sounds a little tedious.
It is, which is why jQuery gives us .toggle. It handles all that state checking for you. One word, full functionality. But the book also teaches you how to check that state manually using a filter, affles.visible. That's super useful for more complex logic.
Now, this whole disclaimer situation creates a kind of philosophical dilemma. If we use jQuery to hide the text on page load and then add a button to show it, what happens to the user who has JavaScript turned off?
The no-script user. This could be someone on a strict corporate network, a very old phone, or someone using a screen reader that doesn't handle scripts well. If your site relies on JavaScript just to show its basic content,
Those users get a blank page.
or worse, they get the disclaimer text but no button to close it. Or they see the button but clicking it does absolutely nothing.
And this leads to this core concept of progressive enhancement. I feel like this is a central pillar of the book's philosophy.
It's the golden rule. Progressive enhancement says, build your content in raw semantic HTML first. Make it accessible. So the disclaimer text should just be there in the HTML, fully visible to everyone.
Okay, that's the baseline.
That's the baseline. Then you use jQuery to layer on the enhancements. You use jQuery to create the hide button and inject it into the page. You use jQuery to add the click handler that hides the text.
So if JavaScript fails for any reason,
The user just sees the text. They don't see a broken button because that button was never even created. The site is maybe less cool, but it is 100% functional and legally compliant. It degrades gracefully.
I love that phrase. It's like a safety net. Now, you mentioned creating the button on the fly. How do we actually put new HTML into the page using jQuery?
It's surprisingly literal. You can just feed raw HTML strings right into the $ function, like div button, hide button div. jQuery creates those DOM elements in memory.
But they aren't on the page yet.
No, they're just floating in the ether. You have to tell jQuery where to put them, and you have a whole suite of methods for that.
Yeah.
Append, prepend after, before.
What's the difference between, say, append and after?
Prepend and append put the new content inside the target element, either at the very start or the very end. Before and after put the content outside the target element as a sibling. It's all about where in the family tree you want to graph this new branch.
Let's apply this to another Star Tracker feature they talk about, the spoiler revealer.
Yeah, I love this example. They have a gossip column, which A-list celebrity was seen stumbling out of a club. But they don't want to just give the answer away.
So the logic is, hide the answer by default.
Yeah.
And then insert a tell me button next to it.
Right. But here's the ninja challenge. You have 10 of these gossip items on one page. When you click a button, you can't just say the answer.show.
Because that would reveal all 10 answers on the page at once.
Exactly. It defeats the whole purpose. So how do you link specific button A to its own specific answer A?
This is where this keyword comes back.
It comes back, but with a friend. We use DOM traversal.
Okay.
First, you use back the exact button that was clicked. Then you chain on the .next method.
What?
This tells jQuery, look at the very next sibling element in the HTML structure immediately after me. So if your HTML is a button followed immediately by a span with the answer,
It grabs that specific span.
it grabs just that one span. It's like navigating a family tree. Find me, then find my younger sibling. This allows for incredibly powerful contextual interaction without needing unique IDs for every single thing on the page. The structure is the logic.
That is seriously elegant. Okay, let's make things move. Section 4, animation, or as the client would say, give it the Web 2.0 feel.
The make it pop section.
So we're going beyond the simple show and hide. Now we have fade in, fade out, slide up, slide down.
These are what the book calls the canned effects. They are incredibly easy to use. You can pass them a speed as a string slow, fast, or a precise number of milliseconds.
There's a major trap here with timing, isn't there? The fact that JavaScript is asynchronous.
This is a huge concept for novices to grasp.
Okay.
When you tell jQuery, #box.fadeOutSlow, jQuery kicks off that process in the background. But the JavaScript interpreter doesn't wait around. It immediately moves to the very next line of your code.
So if the next line is, say, #box.remove.
The box gets deleted from the DOM instantly before the fade animation even has a chance to start.
So it just disappears, no animation.
It just pops out of existence. It looks like a bug. The animation never happens because the element is gone.
So how do we tell the code to wait until the animation is finished?
We use a callback. Almost all jQuery effects take an optional second parameter, which is a function. This function is guaranteed to execute only after the animation has reached 100% completion.
Okay.
It's like saying, start fading out, and when and only when you are completely done, then run this other piece of code.
That is vital. Now, the canned effects are nice,
Mm-hmm.
but the client wants custom stuff. He wants a box to grow and change its border thickness at the same time.
For that, we need the powerhouse, the animate function. This is where the real magic is. You pass it a JavaScript object of CSS properties that you want to change over time. Something like 500px, border width, 10px.
And I noticed you said border width, not border width with a hyphen.
Right. You can't use hyphens in JavaScript object keys unless you wrap them in quotes. So the convention is to just use camel case. Padding left becomes padding left.
And we can use relative values in there too.
Yes. This is so cool. You can say width plus 50px. That tells jQuery, I don't care how big it is now, just make it 50 pixels bigger. This is perfect for things like hover effects, where you want a button to sort of pulse or grow.
But there's a big limitation the book points out. Core jQuery can do math on numbers height, width, opacity, but it can't do math on colors.
Correct. You can't mathematically calculate the midpoint between, say, red and blue natively in the core library. It just doesn't know how to interpolate hexadecimal color codes.
So we're just stuck, no color animation.
Never. This is where the plugin ecosystem comes into play. You go and download the Color Animations plugin. It's a tiny file that extends jQuery's brain, basically teaching it how to do color math, and suddenly animatecolor.blue works perfectly.
This leads us to another concept, easing, which sounds relaxing, but it's actually physics.
It's totally physics.
Yep.
Easing describes the rate of change of the animation over time. The default in jQuery is called swing. It starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and then slows down at the end. It feels natural, like how a car accelerates and brakes.
And the alternative to that is?
The alternative is linear, which is robotic, just a constant, steady speed from point A to point B. It looks very stiff, very unnatural.
But the client doesn't want natural or robotic. He wants bouncy.
Of course he does. For that, you need another plugin, the easing plugin. This gives you a whole library of advanced math functions like ease out bounce.
So it literally looks like a bouncing ball.
It's exactly like dropping a rubber ball. It hits its target, bounces up a little, up, down, and then settles. You can apply that exact physical motion to a drop-down menu. It makes the interface feel tactile, like it has real weight and mass.
But animations bring a whole new problem. The book calls it the mad clicker.
Oh, yeah. We've all been this person, the user who clicks a menu button 10 times in 2 seconds because they're impatient or just bored.
So what happens to all those animations they just requested?
jQuery uses what's called an animation queue. It's very polite. It says, okay, you asked me to toggle this menu 10 times. I will perform that toggle 10 times in order. So you stop clicking and the menu just sits there bouncing up and down for the next minute while you watch in horror.
It's the ghost in the machine. How do we exercise it?
With the stop method. Specifically stop. True, true. You put that at the beginning of your animation chain. It tells jQuery, hey, clear the queue. Forget everything I told you to do 5 seconds ago. Stop what you're doing right now and jump to the end of the current animation.
So it makes the interface responsive to the user's current intention.
Exactly. Not their 5-second-old history of frantic clicking. It's crucial for things like hover menus.
Absolutely. And this brings us to chaining animations. We mentioned we can chain selectors, but you can also chain actions together, like doing 3 different things in a row to the same element.
Precisely. You can write something like #banner.hide. .slide down, .fade out. jQuery reads that from left to right. It will instantly hide the banner, then slide it down to view, and once that's done, it will fade it out. It just passes the element object down the line like a bucket in a fire brigade.
What if I wanted to pause in the middle? Like slide down, wait 2 seconds so the user can actually read it, and then fade out.
You just insert the .delay method into the chain. It's literally a pause button for the queue. So slide down, .delay, 2000, .fade out. It lets you write these really complex time sequences in a single readable line of code.
Incredible. Okay, let's move into section 5, advanced navigation and interface techniques. The client has a very specific and very 2008 request. He wants a navigation menu that looks like it was made in Flash.
The Flash killer menu. We have to remember, back then, if you wanted smooth, fluid, organic motion, you pretty much had to use Adobe Flash. But Flash was this black box. Search engines couldn't read it. Screen readers couldn't read it.
You couldn't even select the text.
Right. So the client wants this blob behind the menu text that sort of slides around and follows your mouse like a spotlight.
How do you even do that without Flash?
It's a bit of beautiful trickery. You create an empty div with a background color, that's our blob, and you position it behind the navigation links using CSS-Z index.
Okay, so it's just sitting there.
It's just sitting there. Then, when the user hovers over a link, say the About Us link, jQuery instantly calculates 2 things. That link's current position on the page.
It does that and left.
And its current width, .width.
And then you just tell the blob to go to that position?
You animate the blob. You tell it. Animate your left CSS property to match the link's left property, and at the same time, animate your width property to match the link's width.
And if we use that bouncy or elastic easing we just talked about?
The blob looks like it slingshots itself from home to About Us. It stretches and snaps into place. It feels totally organic and alive, and it's all just standard, accessible HTML and JavaScript. This was one of the techniques that really helped kill Flash on the web.
We're also talking about scrolling. Star Trek R wants a floating nav. You know when you scroll down a long page and the menu sticks to the top so you don't have to scroll all the way back up?
Sticky headers, yeah. To do this, we hook into the window.scroll event. This event fires every single time the user moves the scroll bar, even 1 pixel.
And inside that event function,
we check a value called dim_document.scrollTop. This tells us exactly how many pixels the user has scrolled down from the very top of the page. We just take that number and apply it to the top CSS property of our menu.
But the book warns about a stutter or a jitter if you do it that way.
Right, because that scroll event can fire hundreds of times a second. If you just hard set the CSS position every single time, it can look jerky. The ninja move is to use stop and animate with a very short duration.
Ah, so the menu gently glides or catches up to its new position instead of just snapping there.
Exactly. It feels much more luxurious and smooth.
And what about jumping around the page, like those back-to-top links you see everywhere?
The default browser jump is really jarring. You click the link and bam, you're instantly at the top. It's disorienting.
So how do we fix that?
With another classic plugin, the Scroll To plugin, you intercept the click on that back to top link, prevent the default jump, and instead you animate the scroll top property of the page itself.
So you actually see the page flying past you in reverse.
You see it scroll. It gives the user crucial spatial context. It tells them, oh, I am moving up the page instead of just teleporting them.
One last thing on scrolling. The client hates the default browser scroll bars. Calls them ugly. He wants custom ones.
This is a controversial request, and the authors give a big warning here. Overriding native OS controls is really risky. People know how their own scroll bars work. If you break the spacebar scrolling or the mouse wheel, users get very, very angry.
But sometimes the design team wins.
Sometimes design wins. If you absolutely must do it, don't try to build one from scratch. Use a well-tested plugin like JScrollPane. It basically hides the real scroll bar and replaces it with a div that you can style however you want with CSS.
But there's another catch, isn't there?
There is. Core jQuery doesn't track the mouse wheel.
It doesn't.
Nope. So you need another plugin specifically to listen to the mouse wheel hardware so that your fake scroll bar actually moves when the user spins their mouse wheel. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, but for a high-end immersive site, sometimes it's what's required.
Okay, final stretch. Section 6. Resizing and the big gun itself. jQuery UI.
So far, everything we've talked about is the jQuery core library. It's light, fast, essential, but sometimes you need the heavy machinery. You need drag and drop, sortable lists, date pickers, complex widgets. That's jQuery UI.
It's a whole separate library you have to include.
It's an official extension, yeah. And because it can be quite large, you typically do a custom build on their website where you only download the specific components you need.
Before we get to the widgets, though, let's talk about just resizing the browser window. This was kind of the precursor to modern responsive web design, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. Before we had elegant CSS media queries, we had the resize event in JavaScript. You'd listen for the window size changing, check the width using wadi.width, and then manually swap out entire style sheets with jQuery.
That sounds incredibly clunky.
It was primitive, but the book emphasizes a really important coding best practice here. DRY. Don't repeat yourself. You define your layout switching logic in a named function, let's call it style sheet toggle, and you call that same function in two places. Once when the page first loads, and again every time the window is resized. That way you handle the initial state and the changing state with the exact same piece of code.
That's smart. Now let's get into the interactive resizing. The jar_track_r.comment box needs to be resizable by the user.
If you've ever used a web form where you can grab the little corner of a text box and drag it to make it bigger, that's almost certainly jQuery UI. The implementation is dead simple. You just select the element and call .resizable.
That's it, one line.
That's the basic implementation. But the real power is in the configuration options. You can set a min height and max height, so they can't drag it so big it breaks your whole layout. You can even set a grid so the box snaps to, say, 20 pixel increments as you drag and makes it feel really tidy and engineered.
And then there's the big one, the pane splitter, like in an email client, where you can drag that vertical line between your inbox list and the message view.
Right. This is much more complex logic. You have two divs sitting side by side. As you drag the handle, one div gets wider and the other one must get narrower at the same time to fit inside the container.
So how do we handle that constant recalculation?
We hook into the resize event callback that the widget provides. This is a function that runs every single time the mouse moves, even 1 pixel during the drag. And inside that function, we do the math. Container width minus sidebar width equals the new content width. We update the CSS on the fly, hundreds of times a second.
It really feels like at this point we're moving from making web pages to building web applications.
That's exactly what's happening. We aren't just displaying static documents anymore. We are building rich, interactive software interfaces that live entirely inside the browser.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground here. From just selecting a simple table row all the way to building a complex, physics-based, resizable user interface.
It really is the complete journey from novice to ninja. We started with the basics, just finding things. Then we learned how to change them. Then we made them move and animate. And then we built entirely new interactive tools with them.
What's the biggest takeaway for you if you had to distill this entire book and philosophy into one single insight?
For me, it has to be the power of the ecosystem. The true ninja doesn't write everything from scratch. They understand that the real power of jQuery was its community and its plugins. The color animation plugin, the easing plugin, scroll toe, the entire jQuery UI library. The skill is in knowing what tools are available and how to glue them together elegantly to solve a problem.
And there's a final word of warning from the authors, too.
The hammer and nail problem. Just because you now have a hammer that can animate every single element on the page doesn't mean every element is a nail.
Yeah.
Just because you can override the scroll bars doesn't mean you should.
Don't make the user dizzy just to show off your new ninja skills.
Exactly. Usability first. Always. Use these powerful tools to solve real problems, like the zebra striping for readability or the progressive enhancement for accessibility. True elegance is often invisible.
And finally, the book says the only way to truly become a ninja is to
Dirty your hands. You cannot learn this stuff by listening to us or even just by reading the book. You have to open a text editor, write the code, break it, watch it fail in some weird, unexpected way, and then fix it. That cycle of breaking and fixing is where the actual learning happens. It's how the neural pathways get formed.
Well, I'm feeling ready to go capitalize some CSS properties and chain some methods together.
Let's do it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into jQuery, novice to ninja. Go create something elegant. We'll see you next time.